Hello and welcome back to the Champion Draft Series, now recapping Week 6. We've been in this series for quite a bit now, and joining me back at the desk, we've got MonteXristo. How you doing, Monty?
I'm doing very well, Ghost. It's been a while since I've been here. Well, not that long. I was here for the mid-season breakdown, but I'm super excited to be back for a week-specific breakdown, ready to get into all the action. And for those of viewers who might just be joining us for the first time, the Champion Draft Series isn't your ordinary tournament. It's played week after week by a group of other content creators. You can view all their matches on their own channels and on their own Twitch streams and everything of that nature, but we break down all the action here. And on top of all of that, it's a draft format, which means that the champions have been split up into tiers and provided a score. Each competitor is only allowed to choose so many champions from each tier. And we've just had a mid-season trade period, so everything is coming to a head just in time for playoffs.
Yeah, it's getting real spicy, and the players are really at each other's throats to try to get those points to make it to the playoffs. So, Monty, let's just jump right into the action.
We here at the Champion Draft Series like to analyze and follow different trends rising among the competitors. A few weeks ago, we talked about the rise of Demacia and how elites were coming out of the woodworks to stomp everything into the ground. Now it seems like Ionia has become the hottest meta trend. Ghost, why don't you take it away and tell our viewers a little bit about how this came to be?
Yeah, Monty, well, that is a very interesting question, because Ionia did get a lot of new cards this expansion, but it wasn't the only one. Noxus and Bilgewater both also got new champions and a lot of new cards, Noxus being one of the hot regions in this series so far, with its flexibility tools, able to push for, like, aggressive decks, combo-oriented decks, mid-range decks, or even like your control, flock, scorched earth, removal decks. Noxus was where it's at. So, and not to mention, P&Z decks and other regions as well got a lot of cool new cards and tools to play with. So why has Ionia sort of risen to the top here? Well, Monty, coins are very good, allowing Ionia decks to essentially cheat mana, to play more mana than they normally would in each turn, allowing them to use those stalling tools. Not to mention, to go off of those stalling tools I just mentioned, the Champion Draft Series has sort of become a very mid-range sort of style with a lot of these champions that players have access to. To go off that elite comment you had earlier, we were talking about the trend of elites. Well, Ionia being able to stun, recall, stall, deny those champion strengths, pretty good in helping you survive to the late game and playing your powerful win condition. So a lot of good stuff with Ionia so far, and we can look at the games, the decks that have been brought out by these different players. Rise Yi finally made its debut in Capitao Circuit's lineup. He's brought it a few times, but it's been banned. Yasuo Anivia by Elzon, who is probably any mid-range deck's nightmare with all the stuns, the frostbites. You're not getting any of your big units in there, right? And then we've got Karma. Oh, Aikado's Karma deck. As you all know, Karma works very well with coins. He doesn't have the classic set in his roster, instead bring Vi to keep that P&Z Karma action going. But with all of those coins, refilling your mana, allowing you to do so many different doubled up spells with Karma. I mean, look to my right of me. It's been the same clip, this whole breakdown. Like, this is from one of Aikado's Karma games. So, like, I can tell you right now, you can see how powerful Ionia has been able to show up with this coin package. So we're going to have to see if other players adapt toward this, maybe target Ionia in some way, or if this is just going to become the new strategy that the players start to shift to, at least the ones that have Ionia in access.
Well, Ghost, with the rise of Ionia, I expect that the meta will shift yet once more, this time to favor swarm-style decks. The region that tends to be the best with that strategy is Bandle City, and one of my favorite Yordles is Teemo. Now, our deck dive for this week is featuring a trap deck, but unfortunately Elzon traded away Teemo, so we're going to take a look at Sandy Strike's Caitlyn Renekton instead.
Yeah, as Monty mentioned, we've got another exciting brew from Elzon here today. She recently acquired Renekton, which meant she recently acquired Shurima, and she got access to a lot of the strike spells that they have now, which pair very well with her Caitlyn, getting a lot of traps into the deck. So let's go ahead and look at Elzon's Caitlyn Renekton list. What's the first thing that stands out to you, Monty, when you take a look at this list?
Well, Ghost, you already said it. It's got to be all the strike spells. I think this is such a clever inclusion and such a clever build around for this type of deck. Caitlyn, alongside her new addition, her newest card, Flash Bomb Peddlers, means that these strike spells are not only going to clear the board now, but they're going to continue to clear the board over future turns as Flash Bomb traps come out of the deck. And as a fallback plan, we have Renekton, who is, of course, just going to flip the moment he gets one attack and one block, or one attack and one strike off. It's a really cool deck, and I really like the way it's been constructed. I really like the balancing here, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, a card that I want to note is the Swinging Glaive, which not only allows our champions and our other units to probably become a bit bigger, a bit more threatening with all the lucky finds it generates, but it also makes it quite easy for us to activate the Grappling Hook, a card that we have 3 copies of, and in many decks is kind of hard to activate, can sometimes break up the hands, but when we are constantly targeting our champions with equipment, with strike spells, and with these lucky finds that we're finding just from our regular attacks, these grappling hooks suddenly become immediate and constant threats.
The other addition in this deck that I really like is the Aloof Travelers. While we do have ways in this deck to deal with a lot of mid-size or even some slightly larger threats, a lot of the big HP units are going to be hard to take down. You're going to need Flash Bomb and traps over several turns, as well as a strike, or maybe multiple units are going to have to trade into a single one. Aloof kind of helps you bypass that a little bit by getting rid of it before it even hits the board.
Another inclusion here that I really like is Rite of Negation, not as a 1-of, but as a 2-of, which for some lists might be a little too much, but I would like you to remember that Elzon is up against Aikado this week, who brought not just Karma in his roster, but also Seraphine, and Rite of Negation is one of the few ways to just cancel out all of those doubled up spells, so probably a very important tech tool in this list.
I'm a big fan of that inclusion as well. Your champions are just so important to your win condition with this deck that you need a way to protect them, as well as just stop any massive spells from your opponent that could otherwise kill your face.
Yeah, and out of all the strike spells in this list, Monty, one of my favorite Shuriman cards in general, the Siphoning Strike. Bit expensive for this deck, so only a 1-of, but when you get it and it goes off, suddenly your Croc and your Cop are all pretty huge and hitting you for a lot more and a lot harder to remove. So definitely a very fun inclusion. I like it in the deck as a 1-of.
Yeah, it's a really neat buff spell for a deck like this, but you know what is a buff spell that I've been missing a lot since the standard rotation happened? The Absolver. Shurima no longer has win conditions in standard, but in draft, well, Elzon's putting it to great use in this deck. Anything can get through for that last little bit of damage if she needs it to. Big fan of this inclusion. Love it, the deck.
Yet definitely one of the more exciting decks that we've had on this deck dive segment on the show. But as always, this was not the only spicy list that was brought onto the Champion Draft Series this week. And if you want to see the lists that the other competitors brought, just check the description below. They are all there. With only 2 weeks remaining in the regular season for the Champion Draft Series, our players are fighting to earn as many remaining points as they can to secure their spot in the Final Four. But with more than half of the competition still sitting at 4 wins or more, it's kind of come down to the wire to see who makes it and who does not. We've got a lot of nail-biting matches coming up in these next couple of weeks. Monty, what exactly do our viewers at home need to look out for?
Well, let's get right into it, Ghost. To start us off, I want to talk a little bit about Puffball Panda and the Holy Heretics, who were sitting pretty at the top of the leaderboard over the last week. But with their recent loss to Spids' redeemable qualities, they're suddenly on thin ice. Puffball Panda's really going to have to turn it around and bring her A-game against Absolution's Made in Heaven if she wants to make it to heaven herself. Yup, Croc. Aikado's team has been on a bit of a win streak as of late. We talked a little bit earlier about his Karma P&Z deck and how great that was with the addition of coins. But will he be able to continue bringing these powerful decks and piloting them to the success he needs to find in order to face down the untargetable redeemable qualities and the menacing roster of Dale Brazil? We'll just have to wait and see. Capital's season started pretty rough, but he's bounced back after the trade week, taking down forces like Mafraju's Dali Brazil, but if he can't take on Ramus Ranch Rangers, Value Train, or the redeemable qualities, his early season's gonna come back to bite him in the butt. Julia Mafraju's Dali Brazil has been a menace to the rest of the competition, but has been proven to be beatable. If she's unable to handle the Demon Diff's pressure or Yup Croc's removal, we might just see an upset where she struggles to top. Wouldn't that be something, Ghost?
Yeah, that certainly would take me by surprise, Monty, and there's a lot to consider when looking at this series. So who would you recommend that the viewers at home keep their eyes on?
Even if her games weren't as influential as they're going to be, I would recommend the viewers keep their eye on Spids and her team, the Redeemable Qualities. She is one of the best innovators in the game. She's one of the strongest players in the North American server, and she has consistently shown how much of a threat she can be in a limited format like this draft series. And I touched on it at the beginning of my spiel, but these upcoming games for Spids and her team, the Redeemable Qualities, are going to be some of the most influential, not only for herself, but for her opponents, Yup Croc and Capital's crew. Whether she wins or loses, these games will decide the fate of these three players.
Wow, yeah, definitely has me on edge, Monty. So yeah, thank you very much for your analysis. But to get on a little less serious of a matter and a little bit of fun stuff before we end this recap, we've got a very exciting highlight from this week's games.
I like to call this week's highlight Mushroom Madness. We're going to take a look at a game between Elzon and Aikato to see why maybe she should have reconsidered trading away the Swift Scout. Aikato picked up not one, not two, but all three copies of his Teemo in his deck where Teemo was just supposed to be Bandle City access. But adapting to this new game plan, he put it to great use and had a flip Teemo attacking very, very early.
We really want Nami and we want Shelly.
Cosmic Youngling top deck, Teemo over there. You played Teemo half as much as I have.
Yeah, at this point, it basically is a shroom. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I take it back. Triple Teemo is in fact shroom aggro. That's my bad. I thought I was playing a good honest deck.
If we have a moment to cast it, Teemo's Mushroom Cloud was the second Teemo in hand. Oh, so it's just a leveled Teemo here. Which never happens for me.
And we have flipped Teemo in a deck that runs no shroom support.
That's a doubling to 30 already. Jesus fucking Christ.
And so it begins.
Nothing like Sudden Surge or Stress Defense. So I think we should be able to still Flash Freeze. And there is the Avalanche for the dreams that I was just speaking of.
Give me Trinket Trade. Give me Trinket Trade. Give me Trinket Trade. No! Okay, that's fine, honestly.
Though I think yeeting the Youngling was just wrong into the Avalanche, despite it looking like it might be the right call. I think it was just wrong.
Bro, they've actually taken 1 damage per turn from this fucking Teemo. This Teemo's crazy, dude.
Let me draw here, I think. That's a Divergent Paths, unfortunately, and it perfectly counters everything that I just tried to do. So we're just gonna pass and then hope that this is enough to live until the next turn.
We can go and stack both of these with the intention that we buffed up Teemo. He's gonna hit now.
So, I mean, I just have to hope that the top deck here is perfect. I just have to hope here that the top deck is perfect, and then I also immediately also find Star Shaping.
Mushrooms. Mushrooms. A exacties.
Teemo fucking betrays me every goddamn time. I swear to God. I was never able to find Teemo when I fucking had him in my draft.
Mushroom Madness indeed, Monty. Quite an exciting highlight. I saw a lot of people in chat just popping off when those mushrooms were popping off themselves. But yeah, that pretty much brings an end to our Week 6 recap. As always, here are the scores for your viewing. As we mentioned earlier, we're in a very tight race for points right now to make sure that players can make the top 4, make the playoffs, and get a piece of that $1,000 prize pool. But if you want to catch some of these games, here is the schedule for Week 7 up in front of you right now, with all of the times and the players that will be participating. And yeah, that basically wraps it all up. We've still got a few weeks left this series, so definitely stay tuned as we've got a lot of action to still bring to you. But as always, I'm your host, the Pink Ghost, and I want to appreciate Monty for joining us yet again to help us break down some of the action.
It was my absolute pleasure to join you once again, Ghost. I always love coming on to break down all the action. I love this series, and I can't imagine how much effort and time you've put into it. And it's been so wonderful to be a part of. So thank you to all the competitors for coming out and giving it their best. Thank you for putting it together. And thank you to all the viewers for letting us put on such a wonderful show. We'll see you all next time.